We begin with the latest development from The Hague, where the International Criminal Court Appeals Chamber has ruled to strike out the use of recanted evidence in the Deputy President William Ruto and former broadcaster Joshua Sang case. In reversing the decision on the use of recanted evidence, the ICC Appeal Chamber ruled that trial court erred as the evidence was detrimental to the accused since it limited cross-examination of the witnesses. The Appeals Chamber also found out that the admission of Rule 68 was applied retroactively as it was used after the trial case had begun. What does this ruling mean for the case against Ruto and Sang? Lawyer Martin Olo will be joining us in a short moment to just give perspective to this big ruling. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir has reappointed his rival Riek Machar as vice president. This is the culmination of a deal to try to end months of civil war in the world's newest nation. The announcement returned the presidency to where it was soon before fighting erupted between supporters of the two men in December 2013, a conflict that went on to kill thousands of people and force more than 2 million to flee the country. Here is KTN's Lilian Odera, the rest of that report.
Excellency, President.
Both sides, under pressure from Washington, the United Nations and other powers, signed an initial pact in August 2015 and agreed to share out ministerial positions in January. But that accord has repeatedly broken down, and a UN report last month said both leaders qualified for sanctions over atrocities in the conflict. The decree read out on state TV said Riek Machar would be first vice president, his position before he was sacked in 2013, the move that eventually triggered the violence. There was no immediate announcement from Machar, who said in January that he would not return to Juba until President Kiir rescinds a decision to create 28 new states in the country.
He has just signed an agreement which only talks of 10 states. He had refused to create more states during the negotiations. To act while the agreement is in the process of being implemented, act the way he acted now, gives us a lot of concerns. Is he serious about implementing the peace?
Oil-producing South Sudan split away from Sudan in 2011 amid mass celebrations and promises of aid and goodwill from most of the developed world. But its regional and western backers were dismayed when fighting erupted, often along ethnic lines. Last month's confidential report by a UN panel that monitors the conflict in South Sudan for the Security Council stated that Kiir and Machar were still completely in charge of their forces and are therefore directly to blame for killing civilians and other actions that warrant sanctions. According to the report, those violations include extrajudicial killings, torture, sexual violence, extrajudicial arrests and detention, abductions, forced displacements, the use of recruitment of children, beatings, lootings, and the destruction of livelihoods and homes.
Their numbers is estimated between 13 to 15,000 children who've been forcibly recruited by either side of the conflict.
The report described how Kiir's government bought at least 4 Mi-24 attack helicopters in 2014 from a private Ukrainian company at a cost of nearly $43 million. It added that Machar's forces were trying to acquire shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles to counter the threat of attack helicopters, especially citing the need to continue and indeed escalate the fighting. Lilian Odera, KTN News.
Lim Bol Thong is a young South Sudanese high school graduate who fled his home after violence erupted in his country 2 years ago. He is now using his skills and education to teach children in the Kule refugee camp in Ethiopia. Lim is 21 years old and has been appointed the vice principal at the camp's primary school. Linda Ogutu tells us the story of Lim, which mirrors the humanitarian suffering of most South Sudanese since the conflict broke out 2 years ago.
At 21, Lim Bolthong is a vice principal of a school at Kula refugee camp in Ethiopia. He's not much older than his students. Lim comes from South Sudan. He graduated from high school at the top of his class. A medical degree was his next goal until civil war in the country uprooted his life. Like hundreds of thousands of other South Sudanese, he fled to Ethiopia. With university postponed, he put his skills to good use. Lim began teaching chemistry at the camp's primary school. Last year, he was promoted to vice principal.
It is really good work, serving as the vice principal of this school. But really, it is a very hard work. It is very tremendous job sometimes because as a vice principal, you are in charge of all the school problems.
More than 10,000 people have been killed and 2.3 million displaced since the country's civil war broke out in December 2013, when soldiers loyal to President Salva Kiir first clashed with troops who backed his deputy Riek Machar. Much of the fighting has been along ethnic lines between Kiir's Dinka community and Machar's Nuer people. Ordinary South Sudanese have borne the brunt of the conflict.
I've seen life is not good there. It is not functionable. No security, no food, no whatever. So people are dying day from day.
The schools in the camps face a shortage of teachers, supplies and space. But despite his situation, Lim refuses to be deterred.
When I think about saving people, it really excites me. Because as much as I save people, then my community will grow up. And then I will produce more people to save other people.
Ethiopia hosts more than 100,000 school-age South Sudanese children. Less than half are enrolled in school. Linda Ogutu, KTN News.
Let's now bring in Ambassador Jimmy Deng Makwach, the charge d'affaires at the South Sudanese, in charge of the South Sudanese embassy here in Nairobi. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador, to KTN.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Developments in South Sudan. Would you say that really this is a step forward in the implementation of the peace agreement?
Indeed. As a government, I think we are fully committed to the peace agreement that was signed between the government and the SPLM in opposition. Our president have demonstrated beyond the call of duty that peace must come to the Republic of South Sudan. And by this, he has appointed his former vice president to assume his duty as the first vice president of the country once again after all this conflict.
Mr. Ambassador, why has this taken so long, 2 years since the conflict began in December 2013?
I think all the indications have been there. The government have tried its best to try and negotiate a compromise peace agreement. It has taken long because simply our brothers from the other side also have their own requirements and demands that the government has not been able to agree with. And the international community knows about this, the region knows about this. But we think our people have suffered enough alone that we think we have to end this war. And by that, I think we signed the peace agreement in 2015 because of the suffering of our people. And with that being said, I think the government is more committed. And it has demonstrated once again by the appointment of Dr. Riek Machar as the first vice president again.
The appointment of Riek Machar as vice president again is part of that deal which was agreed on in August 2015.
Yes.
So how committed is the government now?
Government is committed beyond the call of duty because we have been in the front line with the forces of Machar. And today we sat again on the round table. Through the initiative of the region, through the international community, we signed the peace agreement, a compromise peace agreement. And we are committed to implement the peace agreement, and that's why we have appointed Riek Machar as the first vice president. This is a demonstration that shows that we are committed to ending the suffering of our people.
Has Riek Machar officially agreed to these posts?
Well, we hope so, because the appointment came out yesterday. We are hoping that Riek Machar understand what our people have gone through, and as a result, and he has agreed to sign the peace agreement with our government, with our president, and as such appointment was in line or in accordance with the peace agreement, and therefore he should gladly accept it and end the suffering of our people if he's really serious about the peace.
All right. And if indeed he does agree to that and officially announces that, when is he expected to make his way back to Juba?
It is our hope that Riek Machar will make his way to Juba as soon as possible, because we have to start the implementation of the peace agreement. It is called the compromise agreement. Our president have done everything in his power to make sure that Riek Machar comes back to Juba. His advanced teams are already in Juba, and they are updating him on a daily basis. With such appointment now, I don't think there should be any logical reason why he should exile himself again. I think he should just come back to the country. Let's work together and see how to mend the fences that has already been broken.
There's a history of mistrust between the two leaders. What assurances is President Salva Kiir giving that this agreement will work this time?
Without a doubt, I think appointing him in the first place, not rejecting him as the first vice president, this is a confident building between the two leaders that they can work together. The president has gone beyond the call of duty to say the country is bigger than an individual, and therefore let's end this conflict once and for all so our people can live in peace. This is an assurance to the international community and the region that the government of South Sudan is committed to the full implementation of the compromise peace agreement.
How much of a part did pressure from the international community play in this latest development, especially threat of US sanctions by the United Nations?
Two things. A threat of sanctions is a different thing. It can help, it may not help. The threats of sanction in the situation in South Sudan will not help, because when you threaten the two leaders to put sanction on them, the situation will not improve. On the other coin also, pressurizing two leaders to sign an agreement is a good thing, because it will bring peace to the country, and it has done. It has brought peace in the country. But also this pressure must be, there has to be a limit to the external forces on how to pressurize these forces on how they can really bring genuine peace and lasting peace to the people of South Sudan. And therefore it is good to pressurize, but at the same time, let the initiative be carried on by the grassroots, the people who really want the peace themselves.
One of the contentious issues emanating from this conflict was the creation, or the agreement that was first broken was the creation of 28 new states. What is the latest on that?
Indeed, the creation of 28 is not a big issue, because even Riek Machar, after he rebelled, he created 21 states and appointed governors without a constitutional mandate. The creation of more states, not just only 28 states, is a popular demand of the people of South Sudan. They have been demanding even when we were fighting the Arabs. The conflict between the South and the North, we were demanding ourselves rights, and a popular demand was the creation of more states. I think this is an internal issue that can be resolved between Machar and the government of South Sudan. It should not be a big issue. Machar today can assume his duties as the first vice president and still work with the government hand in hand with our president to resolve the issue of the 28. And he created it. He went ahead to suggest 21 states. We say 28 states, so that should not be a problem. He should not let him to be in exile because the issue of the 28 has to be resolved. This is an internal issue that can be resolved internally.
It has been seen as a way of assuming more power by the two leaders. What is the rationale of new states? You say it's the mandate of the people of South Sudan want it. What is the rationale of the new states?
When we came out from Sudan, the 10 states were created actually by the regime in the north, by the Sudan government. The current 28 states is the demand of the people of South Sudan. As such, Riek himself suggested that we should have 21 states. The president have only added 7 out of the 21 that he suggested. Right. That should not be a problem.
Right.
And we think as South Sudanese, we should not let